Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, Patrick Donoghue here, news editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. This doesn't happen very often, but the IFA, the ICMSA, MACRA and the ICSA took action together this Wednesday to mount a protest at the Regional Veterinary Lab in Sligo. The farming organisations are worried that the proposed closure of 3 to 5 of the 6 RVLs will compromise animal health. Amy Fitzgibbon was at the protest and she spoke with some of the protesters.
I'm here with Kathleen Henry, who is Vice Chair of the IFA in Sligo, and James Ralston, who is a MACRA Young Farmers Chair in Sligo. So, James and Kathleen, first of all, a really good turnout today. Are you happy with the amount of farmers that showed up?
Yeah, I think it was a great turnout, and it was great to see them coming from all the different counties that uses the lab. So it wasn't just Sligo that was here. It was great to see them coming from all over the northwest to support the lab here, because it's very important to not just Sligo but to the wider area.
So I mean, we saw farmers here from Donegal, Roscommon, Galway. So that just goes to show how important it is, doesn't it, James?
Yes, it was a great turnout here today, and hopefully it will show the department and all the people up in Dublin that's over it, that they'll keep it going and give more support and get it going, and maybe even expand the labs.
And at this stage, are you worried that it will close, or are kind of hopeful that this will be enough, that if we keep pushing to keep it open, it'll stay open?
Hopefully, like with the turnout today, and hopefully with everybody kind of talking to them between political pressure and farming group pressure, that they will realise how important it is to the area. Like when you see children from all ages right up to adults here, all different farming groups, all different political groups coming here today, they should realise how important it is, and most importantly how important it is to the farmers off the area, because if you want results or if you want whatever, there's no problem getting them here in the lab, and it's so near, besides you having to travel to, say, Dublin or Athlone for them. It's just, they have to realise how important it is before it's too late and take it away from here, and particularly with the threat of Brexit. It's going to be the nearest lab to the border,
and if there's an outbreak anywhere near the border, it'll be very important to have a lab so close.
Oh, extremely important to have a lab so near the border. It's no good realising when it's too late.
Yeah, and you're a beef farmer yourself, Kathleen. How often would you use this lab, and what would you use it for?
You'd use it depending on what you needed it for. But the staff here are always so nice and always so helpful, and they have such a quick turnaround and results. You'd be afraid that it wouldn't be the same if you moved to some other where. And I suppose we're lucky, we're from Sligo, but when you see people coming from Donegal or Cavan or Monaghan, you realise how valuable it is to them. And similarly, I'm sure James would be of the view from MACRA that it is important to even the young farmers and all that in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. And James, it's so unusual as well for 4 farm organisations to come together. We saw even 5 here today: MACRA, IFA, INHFA, ICMSA and ICSA. So that's very unusual, isn't it?
It is now, but when it comes to a crisis like this, we all work together and try and get it all sorted out. Well, hopefully get it sorted out with the department, and that they'll hopefully keep it stay open, because I know myself, I had a calf last year myself, and she had a bit of a hard calving, and the calf was coming along nicely, and it died, and I brought it down here, and they couldn't find nothing, but it was just a brain injury. But
right, okay. But you felt reassured that you got the early result and the early diagnosis?
Yeah, it was fairly good. They were fairly good at getting back with other results as well to me, and successfully.
And if the lab here closes, the closest one would be in Athlone. How far would it be then for you to go all the way to Athlone?
Yeah, well, to go to Athlone, for me, it'd be getting too far, especially then if you're pulling a dead carcass after in a jeep and in a trailer. People might start complaining, and it's just that it's an hour, around not even an hour, 40 minutes drive from my place down to the labs here.
Right, and how far would it get you if you had to go to Athlone? How long would it take you?
Pulling is around 2 hours, pulling a trailer.
And people like Donegal, it would take them a whole day, isn't that right?
Yeah, it would, like, because sure, to get them down here, it's taken maybe 2 or 3 hours, and then you add on another 2 hours, like, to get to Athlone. It just doesn't make sense when you have such a fine facility here in Sligo, when you have such expert knowledge here in Sligo, to just get rid of it for no reason. And like, they're on about cost-benefit analysis, but where is the cost-benefit analysis? Because to have the facility here, it's going to cost them nothing. If they change it, they're going to upgrade. I think I heard on the radio they spent $250,000 doing landscaping up in Dublin.
Yeah.
That would
and
go a
also
long
with
way to
the
keep
Rural
it here.
Action Programme as well. Like, they're saying they want to invest and protect vital services, but surely this is a vital service.
Absolutely, it's a vital service for like the whole community, particularly for the farming community. Like, they're on about, you know, farming being the backbone of rural society, but how can it continue to be the backbone of rural society if they keep taking away all the services that's here to keep it going? And this is a vital service to keep farming in the area, but they don't seem to do that. It's a lot of talk but not a lot of action, because I don't know, do they believe in rural Ireland? They're always able to bring it down south or whatever else, but we're from the west of Ireland, and we seem to be getting forgotten about all the time.
Well, there was a really good turnout today, and a lot of politicians as well showed up. So hopefully with turnouts like that in the future, we'll see a positive result.
Hopefully.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, James.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm now joined by Pádraig Mulligan, who is a dairy farmer from Sligo. Pádraig, you say you use this facility a lot, the regional lab in Sligo a lot.
I use it at least once a week, and as soon as I have a problem, like if I have a calf with a scour this morning, I can bring it in, can get it typed. If I'm drying off cows, I can come in and see which is the more suitable tube to use. There's no point in using expensive tubes for the wrong cow. Any problem I have, I can come here and get it sorted out. The staff here is very, very helpful. They've done a lot of research. We had problems with cows once. A group of cows was very thin. We didn't know what they were. They came in here and they checked them for minerals and trace elements. And we got into the problem in a very short amount of time. But if this facility's run there, we would be out of business very fast, because our herd is so big. If anything goes round it, it's very, very serious. Yeah. And if anything happens, we're gone.
You can't be going all the way to Athlone or Kildare even if they close Athlone.
Even though we have a large herd, our margins are still very, very small, and the small margins is very, very dangerous. If anything goes wrong, it's all over.
How long have you been using the lab here?
We're 45 years. We're more than 45 years. We're in dairying for 45 years, and went into dairying in 72, and we're 45 years in. But we used it for various things before that, but the last 45 years is for dairying, and they're doing a lot of work with us and a lot of research. They've come out and taken blood samples from cows and done for trace elements and all like that.
So you know the staff well, and you've got a relationship with them.
The staff is very, very helpful, very, very helpful, and you know that they do put pressure on that. If you have a problem, come in. They know, well, I didn't come in here for a spin in.
Okay.
And
so are you hopeful after today's protest?
I'm definitely hopeful, very hopeful. Like, we had a great turnout there. Well, I'd say there was close on 500. There was 500. They had signature for something like 375, but I think there was another bunch of leaflets got lost down there, or signature got down there. Okay. So I think that there was close on the 500.
The department got the message then.
The department got the message.
Okay, thanks very much for it. So I'm now joined by Eddie Davitt, who's former Sligo chair. Eddie, happy with the turnout today?
I'm very happy with the turnout. I think it sends a message to the powers that be, that this lab is very important to this region. This lab has been, tried to be closed in the past. This old rumour has gone on for quite a long time, but it's so vital to this region. It covers from Donegal to the far end of Mayo. It covers about 6 counties, Cavan, Monaghan, Donegal, or Sligo, Leitrim, Donegal, and a lot of Mayo, and some from Roscommon comes down here, because it's out in the country. It's out in the countryside. It's not beside any town or any city. It's easy access to get to it. We have to travel 2.5 hours now if this lab is closed to Athlone. It's beside a college, I'm told, where there's over 1,000 or 700 or 800 students. It's, as you know, Athlone is an impossible town to get through. I have been coming here for the last 40 years with lambs. I'm a sheep farmer, and I have been coming here with lambs. I was also a suckler cow farmer in the past, but I'm a sheep farmer the last 10 years now, and it's so vital to come here. I can live in a lamb or a ewe here. I had a problem there 2 years ago. I dropped in 2 ewes. I had the results in 3 hours. It was a massive outbreak of a worm problem in the middle of June,
Okay.
when you wouldn't expect to have a problem with worms, but it was a massive infestation of worms.
Okay.
I was able to treat those ewes that evening and the next morning. It could have mean the difference. If I didn't get the results as fast as I did, I could have another 10 ewes lost.
Yeah.
And the same with Porrick Mulligan or any other rest of the farmers. Getting the results so fast and so soon is very important. And I think we have sacrificed enough in Sligo and in the west of Ireland. We have lost the Teagasc office, we have lost the Department of Agriculture office was moved out of Sligo here to Drumshanbo. We have our cancer care services. We have a Centre of Excellence in Galway now. Now we're hearing this department is talking about a Centre of Excellence in Cork and Athlone and back Western and closing down the smaller labs. Now we cannot allow that, and we won't allow it. And I think to show a strength that showed out here from all organisations today was, if there is not a message there for the powers that be and those staff that's gone in there, the decision makers, and some of them was there when they tried to close. I won't mention names, but some of the same people was there 6 years ago when they tried to close it. So,
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday.
Also on Wednesday, Glanbia posted a 13% increase in annual profits and announced new plans to restructure its operations between the Co-op and Glanbia plc. Irish Farmers Journal Agri-Business Editor Owen Lowry sat down with the Glanbia Group Chairman Henry Corbally to get the details.
I'm here this morning with Henry Corbally, Chairman of Glanbia Co-op, on the announcement of the proposal to reduce down the shareholding in the PLC by 5% in totality to 31%. Henry, maybe you'll explain the reasons why you're proposing this to the Co-op members.
Absolutely, Owen. I wouldn't have said our proposal was to reduce anything. I would have said that our proposal is to create a fabulous new business here in Ireland, which will be known as Glanbia Ireland. It will be GII as we know it at the minute, but it would also add in 60% of ownership in our consumer foods business and indeed our agri business. It will create a business with a revenue of 1.5 billion, and that will be 60% in farmer ownership. This new organisation will be run to the benefit of the two major shareholders, the Co-op and the PLC. But interestingly, the revenues coming through the Co-op will be 50% available to pay down to farmers, and we see that as a shift in emphasis in this organisation. In effect, what we are doing is we are rebalancing the position of the Co-op in this organisation. If we go back into the history of Glanbia as it is, we originally held a very large tranche, over 50% of the shares in the PLC. We will now go to a position where we will still be the majority shareholder in the PLC, but we will have 60% ownership over all of the Irish businesses, over all of the businesses that our farmer shareholders do business with every day.
This is a proposal that may have been familiar to people if you look back in the history and times of Glanbia. Why it's now coming back on the table again? What's different about it this time, and why now?
Well, why now? We think it's a very opportune time. One of the main reasons why now is what we've seen from our supplier base as regards their increased milk supply. We've done a census with our farmers recently. We had a tremendous response to that census, almost 90% response, which is a really good basis to build anything on. So we will have 30% more milk in between now and 2020. We see an integrated Irish business as a better, a stronger vehicle to drive this through. We have the farmers who sit on our representative structure, our shareholder representative structure, will get sight of this over the next number of weeks. We are going out to talk to our shareholder base. We have a council meeting today. We have shareholder meetings over the next number of months, and we will be discussing all this with them, and we feel that we have a very good case to put to farmers to strengthen their ownership in the Irish businesses.
Another part of the proposal today is that you're going to spin out 100 million and create a 40 million fund. Can you explain the rationale for that?
Absolutely. The spin-out has happened before. If I go back into the history of this organisation, we have over a number of years spun out over 600 million in real cashable value to our farmer shareholders. We feel that as the organisation has grown in value, that the shareholders who started that off are entitled to, on a personal level, to avail of some of that great wealth that has been created. At the minute, if you take the current share price, the Co-op's value within that share price is about 1.8 billion. We don't think it's unreasonable that people who have stayed with those shares, those Co-op shares over a long number of years, should from time to time get to take some value off the table. Farmers have appreciated the shareholding spin-out in the past. This time we will have in the region of 100 million to spin out to farmers again. We feel this is adequate at the time. We feel that it's real cash to farmers at a time when they are looking at investments on their own farm. And we feel that it isn't a negative thing at all. We feel that it's very positive. We simply move the shares from being within the Co-op to being with the actual members. So the ownership stays slightly in a different place, but the farmers get real value. The fund that we are creating is partially being created by this movement. It will be at the discretion of the board to use that fund. It will be used 75-25 for active suppliers and indeed for all shareholders in the form of dividend. We have created these funds in the past. For several years these funds weren't necessary and weren't used, but from time to time we might reach crisis points when the board can decide from time to time what the best use of those funds might be.
So all in all, Henry, this creates much more flexibility for the Co-op, a stronger dividend stream, 2 dividend streams for the Co-op, and will we see dividends flowing faster back to farmers?
Yes, we will, because of the systems that we will employ in this. The loss of a small bit of dividend from the PLC will be replaced with a much more direct income stream from profits generated in the new organisation.
Okay, all in all, a lot to be read in this week's Farmers Journal. Thanks very much, Henry.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Last Friday, our livestock specialist Darren Carty joined European Agriculture Commissioner Phil Hogan on a visit to Mount Bellew College. He asked him about the next moves on CAP reform, including the definition of active farmers.
Well, since I became Commissioner, I'm trying to reduce the complexity, and particularly the early checks that we're able to do now in the Department of Agriculture here has meant that about 5,000 farmers are able to avail of getting small errors corrected before it's formalised in the system. This means that they don't suffer penalties in terms of their entitlements. So more and more of this is what we're trying to do in order to help the farmer, and that officialdom would help the farmer to be compliant and to be able to benefit from these particular schemes rather than the other way around. But the greening and the environmental measures and the bureaucratic and complex nature generally of the schemes are certainly not working satisfactorily from an administrative point of view for the farmers, and we need to do something about that, and that's what we will do in the next reform. We'll proof everything against simplifying the policy.
You had a very balanced, I suppose, maybe targets. You were saying that you wanted 3 key areas: generation renewal, or bringing more young people into agriculture, sustainability and income stabilisation. And it was very good. You had a very good quote in this: you can have all the sustainability in the world, but if you don't have it for farmers, that you're not going to have sustainability overall. Is there a few maybe road bumps on the path to getting that? The Brexit challenge at the moment, is that a big challenge to overcome?
Of course, Brexit is a huge challenge from the point of view of that the uncertainty it creates. This is something that Europe didn't want. Irish farmers certainly didn't want, because we have our situation with Northern Ireland, and our trading relationship with the United Kingdom presents an unexpected challenge for us. But the government, I've met the government this week, the Taoiseach, to see what we can do in order to be helpful to the case that Ireland is putting forward. But solutions will have to come from Ireland, and try and convince the European other member states that these are worthy and that they can be included in any of the proposals that will ultimately emerge from these negotiations. It's going to take 2 years initially for the divorce to happen, and then the transitional arrangements on free trade agreements, for example, that we can work out with through Europe with the United Kingdom. So there will be some bumps along the way, but we will see what we can do to be helpful in trying to ease them as far as possible for the benefit of the farmer.
I suppose there was one more announcement this week, and being mindful in the west of Ireland and a high percentage of beef and sheep farmers, the CETA agreement is going to see 50,000 tonnes of beef coming into the EU. Is that a concern, I suppose, for the EU as a whole? And is there more of these challenges going to come maybe in the future?
92% of all trade between European Union and Canada is going to be liberalised. So we're going to have huge opportunities for processed products and for dairy products and right across the board into Canada for the first time. Of course, we had a quota of 50,000 tonnes for beef, but it's certainly not for the prime cuts of beef in its entirety. And therefore, what we will be doing is trying to make up for that in other trade deals, such as Japan, that we're negotiating at the moment. So there's always swings and roundabouts in terms of these tariff quotas. And we will be, arising from a recent study that we have done now in relation to the beef trade in Europe, we will be very mindful of that, and we won't be conceding to the Mercosur countries, and we will try to get additional sales of beef to Japan to make up for the ones that we had to concede in Canada, to get concessions on dairy and other products, and the 92% tariff-free export opportunities now that we have across a range of commodities into Canada.
All the young farmers here today would kill me if I didn't ask this question. Future going forward, sports targeted towards productive, trying to get more young people in that are going to be, I suppose, the cornerstone of agriculture for years to come.
Well, we're amending the legislation this year in order to allow every country to have their own definition of active farmer. So it's up to Ireland then at the end of this year to be in a position to be able to define active farmer themselves. Because no matter where you are in Europe, there's different definitions for different farmers in different countries. So the best thing to do is to leave it to the country themselves to decide the definition of active farmer, and it's a badly needed reform, and this is what we're doing.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday.
The Irish Farmers Journal's beef editor Adam Woods attended a recent open day at the JLX herd in Toonbridge, County Antrim. There are nearly 1,000 in-calf heifers on the farm, as well as a strong machinery business. Adam asked James Alexander how he manages it all.
At the minute, we're trying to turn over heifers. We're buying heifers, whether it's maidens or whether it's suck calves or drop calves, just anything we can buy good. We're buying them and we're vaccinating them, weighing them, splitting them, dosing them, and bulling them and selling them in calf, either in calf or spring them, just depending on the customer.
Where are you sourcing the majority of heifers?
Anywhere we can get them at, anywhere north or south. And we're just 2 or 3 men trying to get in the forest, and we're bringing them up. As long as they're good enough, we don't mind where they come from.
And are you buying a specific breed or?
No, because there's that many different customers, not different farm setups, that not every man wants the same type, and we're trying to spread over a few short horny plainer types, easier fleshing, a few more muscle blue types, a lot of good black heifers going to the glens of Antrim, just a good variation of heifers.
And what are you looking for when you're buying a heifer? We'll say, what are the main attributes of that heifer that you're looking for?
A bit of softness, plates, a bit of bone, not too much muscle to try and leave them calvable. Just a good all round heifer if I can get it.
And what are you putting them in calf to then here when they're on the farm?
Limousine predominantly, some with hull, some with a red heifer to keep the colour coming through. We've got a couple of short horn bulls and a couple of Angus bulls, but predominantly limousine.
And are you using the AI or is it all stock bulls?
All stock bulls.
Right.
I'd rather spend the money on having a good bull that I can use rather than spend the money on the AI. It's just a farm better because it's too split up.
You're obviously heading for easy calving genetics with those bulls. That's very important when you're selecting stock bulls.
Trying to keep easy calving without going too plain or too poor, and good top lines, and keeping away from the NT genes or the Q genes and the limousines.
And in terms of, I suppose, your customer base, is that mainly from the north, or is there some southern customers as well coming back?
No, we sold a good few heifers last year to the south, just the way the euro changed, and a few heifers sold to the south, but no, predominantly nearly all the north, mainly the north. A few to Wales and a few to Scotland, but nearly all the north.
How many heifers do you reckon you'll be selling this year?
I think we sold 630 or something from last February, March time until recently. So.
And are you happy with the performance in terms of finances? Like, is it making economic sense, the system?
It works for us because of all our tractor business and the pickup and machinery business. It just leaves me more time in the office and less time in the calving pen.
Okay. And are you running alongside the suckler herd, or is the suckler herd gone?
The suckler herd's gone. The only sucklers I have is a few pedigrees, main and Jews, and a few pedigree limbs and a few blues.
We've seen the main and Jews down the yard. What was the story with them, or why did you go down that route?
I've seen them a few times in the shows in France, and I just think the plates and the bone are fantastic, and we tried to get a few, but to get the ones we want just didn't work out for us. Didn't get anything really good enough.
And are you happy? Are you keeping them pure, or are you going to maintain them as a pedigree herd?
No, they're all going to Sumsel bulls. They're calving the first time to short horn this time, and then they're bulling to a thick, easy fleshed, muscly Sumsel bull.
Okay, James, thanks very much. That's James Alexander speaking at his open day in County Antrim here to the Farmers Journal. Thanks, James.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Now, let's take a deep dive into the outback with our reporter Tommy Moyles and his guest, Australian farmer Simon Matson. On a visit to Ireland, Simon told Tommy about his experience working on a cattle farm the size of a medium-sized Irish county and moving into sugarcane.
Yeah, sugarcane is a C4 perennial grass, so it's one of those plants where you get to plant it one year and then harvest it the following year, and then for a number of years thereafter you can harvest that same plant. So from a planting point of view, it's pretty easy to grow, but there's always plenty to do to keep it growing. Ultimately it's just a big grass that we cut into little pieces and send off to the mill to get crushed and turned into sugar.
What size is your operation at the moment?
We're what you'd call on the small side of medium, about 160 hectares that we harvest cane from, and then we also grow a number of other plants in a sort of semi-rotation, predominantly legumes such as soybeans.
In a previous life, you worked and lived on a cattle station. Could you give us a bit of your experience of that, and why did you? It was you and your dad that purchased it, was it?
Yeah, it certainly was. I grew up on a cattle station in Western Queensland, one that Mum and Dad had developed through the early 1970s, and then the mid-90s, we bought another cattle station in the Northern Territory, which was just on the bottom side of Arnhem Land, which is in the northeastern section of the Northern Territory, pretty close to the centre of Australia, but right up the north.
Next stop, Indonesia.
Pretty much, yeah, through past Darwin, sort of thing. So yeah, it was a long way north, very hot.
What temperatures would?
Well, realistically, there you've got two seasons: hot and dry, and hot and wet. So the hot and dry season, you're looking at temperatures. Overnight temperatures could get down to sort of 12 or 14 degrees, but then daytime temperatures could get up to 32. So that's your hot and dry season. Your hot and wet season was even worse. Overnight temperatures rarely get below about 25, 26 degrees as a minimum, and could quite frequently get to 45 degrees. So yeah, really hot. The kind of weather where you stick an egg outside and cook it on the dirt. Basically, it was hot enough to fry an egg.
What size property are we talking about here?
We're talking 1,912 square kilometres, which is just a little bit short of 500,000 hectares.
And in Irish terms, that's talking about farming the equivalent of County Cavan. That property is bigger than at least 12, perhaps 13 Irish counties. So what was the workforce like when you went there?
Well, this is totally undeveloped. So when we bought the block, there wasn't even a good access road, no fencing, and no livestock or no domesticated livestock, put it that way. There was plenty of feral donkeys, horses, some feral cattle, and quite a few feral water buffalo that were originally introduced when Australia was first settled back in the early 1800s, and that was they'd been roaming wild ever since, pretty much. So
this was crocodile country as well.
Lots of freshwater crocodile, plenty of barramundi. So barramundi fishing was excellent. But we didn't have too much worries with the saltwater crocodiles. We were far enough from the salt that they didn't really worry us. And the freshies they're fairly timid, so they weren't too much of a worry either. Very good fishing.
And it was just yourself that went there first, was it?
Initially, because there's so much land with no homestead or anything, we went there initially as a group of, I think there was about 10 of us, and built a few rough buildings, basically, in one particular spot, which had a good location where there was plenty of water, permanent water. But because we have hot and dry season and a hot and wet season. During the wet season, it's difficult to do too much development work. And then in that first wet season, we'd got to the point where we had a fair bit of, we had some infrastructure built and we had some horses that we needed to leave there. And yeah, so I ended up spending the first wet season there on my own, basically.
And how long was that first wet season?
Yeah, the wet season lasts around about 3 months.
So you physically saw no human being in 3 months?
Yeah, that's about the size of it, yeah. So
what was that like?
Well, I guess you get to know a lot about yourself. Yeah, it's one of those things. I was born and bred in the Australian outback, so I'm used to isolation and I'm used to working and living on my own. I guess essentially not for that long. This was the first time I'd ever spent 3 months in the scrub on my own too. But yeah, I didn't see it as anything far out of the normal. Basically, there was no point in the whole crew being there because we couldn't have achieved much during the wet season anyway. There was plenty to keep me occupied. I had no dramas there, but yeah, there's no point in having too many people there over the wet season. So yeah, during the dry season, we'd have 15 fellas working for us there to build all the infrastructure. But that first wet season, I did spend it there on my own. Yes.
And your big project that first year was roadways.
Yeah, well, we had to build a new access road. The old existing access track basically followed the river system and it was flooded the entire wet season. So that first wet season I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't get far at all. I did manage to work on that end of the new road that was close to me because I was building that road over much harder territory where there was a lot of rock sort of country and away from the river. So by the second wet season, I actually had that road well established and we could get in and out most of the time except when the creeks were in flood basically. But yeah, that first wet season it was very isolated. How
close was your nearest neighbour?
60 kilometres away.
Okay.
I did get a visit during that period by helicopter, so the next door neighbour came and checked on me. He had his own helicopter, so he flew down to check on me. But I did have a satellite telephone too, so I could communicate with the outside world. But it was isolated enough I didn't have any radio or TV. So yeah, it was a fairly lonely existence that first 3 months.
And what did you end up stocking the station with, or what livestock level numbers did you get to?
Well, like I said, it was all uncontrolled country, so we had to build a lot of fences first and establish tracks and yards to handle that livestock in. So yeah, we ended up, we'd only got to the point of fencing around about, I think it was somewhere between 80 and 100,000 hectares of it. So there was still plenty of it to go yet. And we got to the point of running, a bit over 5,000 head of cattle. So yeah, still a lot of development work to be done when we left there. But unfortunately for us, we had a series of events that basically took all the financial wind out of our sails, if you will, and we ended up having to sell the block, which isn't that uncommon. It's quite often when the people that develop something from scratch have to put everything into it, all their blood, sweat, and tears, and you end up getting to a point where any extra little bit of load becomes too much, and that's what happened to us. The fellow that bought it off us only had it 18 months, I think, and doubled his money. So yeah, there's a lot of luck in agriculture as well as good management. But yeah, the wrong weather event at the wrong time, especially in a country like Australia, can make or break you.
And unlike your European counterparts, you don't have the fallback of subsidies or grants in such scenarios?
No, not at all. So there was no financial help for us. We were very much pioneers out there on our own, and yeah, we got hit with just that wrong weather event. It was actually on the cane farm So we still had the cane farm, and it was to provide the basis of the income that was necessary to do the establishment work on Wongalara in the first 3 years. Well, the first year we headed to Wongalara, I ended up not being able to harvest all of my crop at Mackay simply because it was so wet. We left a big portion of that crop in the paddock, and as it turned out, that was the financial Achilles heel, if you will. I was never able to recover from that.
So now it's your sugar is back as your primary focus at the moment?
Yeah, we were at Wongalara for 7 going on 8 years, and then we had to eventually, the bank made us sell it, and we returned to the cane farm at Mackay, yeah.
Okay, you're only here in Ireland for a few days. You had a visit to Bandon Mart yesterday to see a sale in, I suppose, what is largely dairy country here. What's your first impressions of travelling through this part of Ireland, or how does it compare with home?
Oh well, it's pretty hard to compare, but it's a beautiful part of the world. There's no doubt about that. And all those rolling hills and all that nice green grass. Even though it's winter, it's nice and green. So yeah, it's very pretty, and I think it's excellent country for cattle, sort of thing, whether it be dairy or beef. It's certainly a lot better than a lot of the country in Australia where we run beef cattle, where you can go for 4 or 5 years and hardly get any rainfall. So yeah, there's some big advantages that you have here from that side of it. But I thought the mart was really interesting. There's a lot of similarities between cattle sales both here and at home in Australia. I guess we don't tend to sell too many cattle one at a time. They're sold in much bigger lots at home, and yeah. But apart from that, they're fairly similar, really.
It was probably a good example of the scale that we operate here. I mean, yesterday you would have farmers who were probably running a few hundred head of cattle, selling alongside farmers who might have 10 or 20 cattle. Where do you see that scale? Is it going to be a big issue for us, or what do Irish farmers need to focus on on future markets?
I think...
Or where do you see our advantages or disadvantages?
Well, the biggest advantage you got is that year-round grass. You've got grass that as an Australian from North Queensland and having lived in a lot of northern parts of Australia, that's your big advantage, is that you got year-round green grass. So you really need to concentrate on doing what you do best, which is growing cattle on grass, either for milk or cheese or meat. I think you're always going to struggle to grow arable crops and compete with a place like Australia, where we do have wide open spaces and really large economies of scale. So it's going to be difficult for you to do that, especially with modern freight being what it is. You know, you can send a boatload from Australia, a boatload of wheat from Australia to over here, probably land it here cheaper than what you can produce it in your own country. Having said that, your strength is obviously growing grass. So, yeah, I reckon you'd be able to produce dairy products and beef for that matter and send it back to Australia cheaper than what we could produce it ourselves, probably.
But you'd see some form of role for arable here, but more so in terms of supplementing livestock feed.
Yeah, I think so. It gets difficult to justify the freight on something like feed, wheat or barley or whatever. So, yeah, I think there's always going to be room for arable here, but it'd be mainly for feeding livestock, basically as supplementing what you do best, which is raising cattle or sheep or goats, basic livestock, I see, because of that green grass. And if you've got a bit of the right grain to supplement them with, that can only be an advantage. But, yeah, when it comes to something like milling wheat, oilseed rape and that sort of stuff, I think you're always going to struggle to compete against places like Australia or North America, the Ukraine. I
suppose one of our main issues in Irish ag at the moment is how we deal with climate change and its impact. Now, there are those who don't believe in it. There are those who are very strong believers in it. Can you see it having any effect on us? And I suppose just looking, if you look at Australia and especially the pastoral ground in Australia, that it's grazing country because you can't do much else with it. I mean, Australia, you could nearly say that that country is almost organic until an animal, if it goes to a feedlot, it's pretty much organic all the way. So is that an area where Australia could specialise in?
Yeah, well, as it turns out, Australia actually has the largest area of certified organic farmland of any country in the world, but most of that is actually grazing country, and it was easy certification process simply because it's had no artificial chemicals ever used on it anyway. So yeah, we can certainly produce a lot of organic product, particularly when it comes to something like beef. So I guess that's an advantage that we would have over Irish ag. But yeah, it's all about concentrating on what you do best, I think.
And finally, you're a very passionate man about soil. What's your kind of advice to us Irish farmers?
Well, the way I see it, and I've done an off-field scholarship studying soil biology now, and there are some things that separate the good farmers from the rest. So basically all farmers all over the world get 4 things for free. And it doesn't matter where you are and what sort of soil you own, you will get sunlight, rainfall, carbon as in the form of CO2, and nitrogen from the air. And the key to actually extracting all of those and making best use of them is how much plant material you can grow. So plants are the farmer's link to all of those 4 things that you get for free. Now we all have to pay for our soil, and some more than others, but we all pay relatively dearly for our soil. And as farmers, we need to utilise that to the best of our possible advantage. And realistically, from my world travels, and I've travelled to a lot of places now, the farmers that are doing the best are the ones that can use the 4 things that I've just stated that they get for free to the biggest advantage. And they do that by growing a broad range of plants and really concentrating on doing that well. And it doesn't matter if you're a livestock producer. Most livestock producers still have grass, and at the end of the day, the cows need to eat grass. And so yeah, you need to concentrate on maximising your grass production by maximising your use of the 4 things that you get for free. Trying to get nitrogen out of a bag is an expensive process, and by utilising plants, in particular legumes, you can get a lot of that nitrogen for free. And if you can do that, you immediately reduce your cost of production, and you'll immediately increase the volume of actual biomass that you can grow. And as it turns out, you'll also increase the nutrition value of it as well. So yeah, at the end of the day, nature's been doing this for absolute thousands of years before us fellas even worked out how to do it. Like farmers have realistically, the people of the world have been farming for 10,000 years, but in the ecosystem of the world, plants have been evolving now for millions of years. So I think Mother Nature has worked out how to make things work pretty damn well. And that's how she's been able to grow vast amounts of biomass in all sorts of different locations all over the world, simply with natural systems. And without those natural systems working, she wouldn't be able to do it.
Are we too dependent on synthetics?
Much too dependent. It's as simple as that. The synthetics, while they're easy to use and convenient, at the end of the day, they're lining the pockets of a very few companies to the detriment of pretty much every farmer that uses them. So yeah, we're literally using synthetics as a crutch because they're easy and convenient. We need to get back to harnessing nature and getting her to do the work for us, and that's a lot to do with soil biology and maximising those plants that we all grow.
Super, thank you very much, Simon.
My pleasure, thank you.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast.
Finally, let's hear from our property editor, Shirley Bustede, who features 2 attractive farms in this week's Irish Country Living. No fancy homes or quirky features in these sales, just excellent farmland. She shared more details with consumer editor Ciara Leahy.
Hi, my name is Ciara Leahy, consumer editor in Irish Country Living, and I'm here with our property editor, Shirley Bustede, who in this week's property pages has some very interesting sales. We have what our property editor describes as 2 very good farmers' farms. The first is the choice 125-acre tillage farm in Wexford. Shirley, can you tell our readers more about it, please?
Yes, Ciara, I actually went to see the farm last Saturday morning. It's in South Wexford. It's just off the Duckcannon line towards Campile. It's roughly about 125 acres, and it's laid out in a number of blocks, which will make it very attractive for local farmers to buy land, and maybe a smaller block of land. The first block, I suppose, is...
Because it's broken up, isn't it?
It's broken up. It's in 3 different sections. The biggest block is about 85 acres, and that comes with the house and the yard.
Okay.
And then you have a lovely 13.6 acre block right across the road from that, which would make a lovely addition to any farming enterprise. But about 2 miles away then you have a further roughly about 26 acres. The whole lot of it actually has been rented out the last number of years to a tillage farmer who's kept it in excellent order. So I think the 2 smaller blocks alone would make a super addition to any existing farming enterprise. The bigger block, of course, obviously you're talking a bit more money, but again, I think when I was driving around, it's in an extremely progressive farming area.
Okay.
So there's quite a few dairy and tillage farmers in the area. And the other thing about South Wexford, it's rare that big farms come to the market. So, it could make it very attractive for guys who are looking for a large block of land rather than rent. Maybe they prefer to buy it if they have the means to buy it.
And you were saying earlier that there is a farmhouse on one of the bigger pieces of land now. It's in need of complete refurbishment. But perhaps this could be an exciting project for a person or family looking to put their own stamp on the land.
Possibly, Ciara. The only thing is it's... kind of accessed off a shared laneway it's within the main block of roughly about 85 acres. Yeah, it's a 2-storey house that requires some work, and then there's just a traditional farmyard attached to it. The way it's been offered, the way the auctioneer is offering it, which is Anne Carton from P&O Gorman in New Ross, she's offering the house and the yard with the 85 acres. But having said that, across the road is 13.6 acres, which would make a fabulous site for a house if you could get planning permission.
Great. So there's a few options there if you were starting from scratch.
There is. There's a bid for everybody.
Great.
Depending on the buyer.
Absolutely. Now you also detail another prime piece of land near Tullamore in Offaly. Agricultural land in Offaly has been doing very well over the last year or so, and I'd say that this is another welcome addition, is it?
Yes, and particularly where it's located near Killa, and in the last year alone, in the last 12 months, land within the Killa, there's 3 main areas, Killa, Geeshel and Kilcormac areas of Offaly have performed extremely well last year in terms of price. So this particular farm is not too far from Killa off the main Tullamore Portlaoise Road. It's in 3 blocks again, I suppose similar to the Wexford farm. It's in 3 blocks, and I didn't see this farm, but apparently it's described as a beautiful piece of ground. So very, very good ground. It's in tillage and grass. And the biggest block is about 82 acres, about 82.5 acres, all in stubble, accessed by a lane. And then just not too far away then, just down the road, is the remaining 51 acres. And that's laid out in 2 blocks. There's a little 2.5 acre field across the road. And then you have the remaining 48 acres then just laid out in 4 grass fields. But so as you say, Ciara, it's definitely another farmer's farm.
And definitely another interesting proposition in the sense that you could buy it whole as a big purchase, or it could be subdivided between if a few people were interested.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about these farms, offering them a lot, because definitely they're more affordable. I mean, for somebody to go in and buy 133 acres, this particular farm is guided at 9,000 to 10,000 an acre. So to go in and buy 133 acres, you're talking a lot of money. Whereas to go in and buy maybe 48 acres or a 2.5 field,
it's a bit more achievable.
It's more achievable, more
absolutely.
affordable.
Now, you do say that there is no farmhouse on this piece of land, but it does come with some elevated country views, which, if you could get the planning permission, would make for a fine house site.
Yeah, there's a little, Ciara, there's a little 2.5 acre field, which apparently is elevated and has lovely views, and is being sold as agricultural, but apparently would make a lovely house site, subject to the appropriate planning permission. And probably likewise in all 3 blocks, even on the 48 acres, there's probably opportunity. It has a huge amount of road frontage, the 48 acres. There's 4 fields and every field has frontage, so there's probably opportunity there also to build a house if somebody wanted just 48 acres and to start up their own little farm,
Absolutely. So really, similar to the one that we spoke about in Wexford, it's a kind of a piece of land that you can make your own depending on your own circumstances.
Exactly. I think, something like this, given the quality and the calibre, it's definitely going to appeal to local farmers. I mean, again, we can't rule out maybe hobby farmers, somebody looking for a parcel of land maybe to build a house, particularly those with a farming background. But these are really what I would call two farmers' farms, because in the main, farmers generally are not looking for a residential property or for a really, really good country house. They're just looking for very good quality land.
Absolutely.
That's what they're after.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Shirley, for that.
You're welcome.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.